Hello, and welcome to another ADLC digital lesson. Today's lesson is on genetic disorders and disease. Have you ever seen an animal or person with two different colored eyes? This is known as heterochromia, and it occurs in many animals. It can actually be caused by injuries or disease, but some animals are born with this condition. Albinism is another interesting condition that occurs in almost all animals and results in the lack of pigment. Both heterochromia and albinism genetic conditions are the result of mutations. But are they good or are they bad? To answer that question, we need to know more about mutation. Remember that mutations are changes in DNA code. Sometimes mutations have no effect because not all DNA is used to code for proteins. And even if it is important DNA code that is changed, it may not change the resulting protein. Sometimes mutations are positive. For example, a small percentage of the population has the CCR5 mutation, which produces a white blood cell protein that provides resistance to HIV. And then there's white cats. White cats are white due to a mutant dominant allele. Now, white cats are perfectly cute, but did you know that 72% of white cats are deaf? So, are white cats genetically diseased? For some mutations, there's no question that they are negative, because they clearly cause illness or death. For example, the terrible disease of cystic fibrosis. This is inherited when the offspring gets two recessive alleles, resulting in many organs not functioning properly. Sickle cell anemia is another autosomal recessive disease that causes severe pain and death due to misshapen blood cells. Since this disease is recessive, you need two copies of the sickle cell allele to have the disease. So if we look at some possible crosses involving this sickle cell allele, we could cross an individual who is normal with a carrier. In that case, we end up with 50% chance of having a normal baby and 50% chance of having a carrier baby. But what's interesting here is that a normal and carrier person are indistinguishable. There's no way to tell a carrier without genetic testing. So many carriers pass on the sickle cell allele without even knowing it. Now, if we cross two carriers, we end up with a 25% chance of having a baby with sickle cell disease. You can imagine a couple having a sickle cell baby having never known they were carriers. Sickle cell disease is very interesting because carriers actually have an advantage in some parts of the world. Carriers are less likely to get malaria, a bad disease spread by mosquitoes. This is a case where a mutation could be considered both bad and good. So what causes mutations? They can happen spontaneously and naturally as mistakes during DNA replication. Certain types of radiation, such as X-rays, can cause mutations. That's why you'll see your dentist taking special care to cover the rest of your body with a lead apron to minimize exposure. Many toxic chemicals cause mutations as well, and tobacco smoke is actually a double whammy. Not only does it contain toxic chemicals, but it also contains radioactive polonium. When mutations are caused in your body cells, it can sometimes lead to cancer. Smoking definitely increases that risk. One important thing to know is that only mutations that occur in the sex cells, that is, the sperm and eggs, have the potential to produce offspring with new traits. If a new trait due to mutation emerges in offspring, that trait can then be passed on to future generations. If the mutation is providing an advantage in the environment, that mutation is likely to be passed on even more. We'll talk more about how mutations affect future generations in another lesson.